Getting lost is often the first step to truly finding yourself. In life, people tend to fear getting lost, whether it's losing direction in their careers, relationships, beliefs, or even their sense of self. But what most don't realize is that being lost is not the end of the journey. It is the beginning of the real one. When Hansel and Gretel found themselves deep in the forest, without guidance, without safety, it was not a punishment, it was an invitation. An invitation to discover something that could never be found within the four walls of their home or under the shadow of dependency. Getting lost strips away the noise of what others expect you to be. It takes away the comforts that shield you from challenge. It removes the masks you've learned to wear and forces you to meet yourself unfiltered, unguarded, and unarmed. Many people try to avoid that feeling of being lost. They chase routine, they cling to certainty, but what is certainty if it prevents growth? What is safety if it becomes a cage? Sometimes you need to walk into the unknown to remember your own power. Just like Hansel and Gretel, we each must leave behind the illusions of security we once relied on. Their breadcrumbs represented the mind's attempt to maintain control, to have a plan, a way back. But nature took those breadcrumbs one by one. Life, in its wisdom, removes the shortcuts. It removes the crutches. And when everything you counted on is gone, that's when your real self begins to awaken. It is in the moments of confusion, isolation, and even fear that transformation starts. Think of a seed. It must be buried in darkness before it can break open and grow. That darkness is not the end, it's the passage to a new beginning. Likewise, when you're lost, you're not broken. You're being prepared, you're being tested, not by the world, but by your own inner calling. Do you continue walking? Do you trust your instinct? Do you dare to step forward when the path is unclear? Getting lost forces these questions into your awareness, and the answers reveal your truth. People often wait for guidance, for a sign, for someone to show them the way. But what if the silence is the teacher? What if the lack of direction is your true map? Getting lost removes the external voices and amplifies your inner one. It is in the silence of the woods that Hansel and Gretel began to grow. It is when no one came to save them that they learned to save themselves, and so it is with you. When the familiar fades away and you're left in uncertainty, you can either panic, or you can pause, you can listen. You can breathe, you can begin to trust something deeper than logic, something ancient, something wise. That inner compass doesn't scream, it whispers, but you only hear it when everything else becomes quiet. Getting lost is not about failing, it's about being honest. When you're lost, you admit you don't know, and in that humility there is power, because the moment you stop pretending to know, you become teachable. The moment you let go of control, something higher can guide you. The forest, dark as it may seem, is full of lessons. Every step forward is a chance to learn. Every obstacle is a mirror. Every fear is a doorway. And slowly, step by step, without even realizing it, you begin to evolve. Hansel and Gretel didn't become strong because they knew what to do. They became strong because they refused to give up when they didn't. They kept moving, they stayed aware, they used what little they had, stones, their wit, their courage. They weren't perfect, they were human, and in that humanity they became heroes. You don't have to know everything to grow. You don't need to have it all figured out. You only need to keep going, to remain awake, and to believe that this journey, however lost it may feel, is shaping you. Getting lost also means letting go of the version of yourself you thought you had to be. The identity you crafted to please others, the role you accepted to fit in, all of that begins to crumble in the forest, because the forest doesn't care who you pretend to be. It only responds to who you truly are. And that raw, unpolished self is the one who must rise. It's not weakness to be lost, it's bravery, because facing the unknown is one of the most courageous things a human being can do. It requires presence. It requires humility, and it requires trust, not in the world, but in yourself. You may not see the destination, you may not know the meaning of every turn, but if you keep walking, you will grow. If you stay open, you will change. And in time, you will look back and realize you were never truly lost. You were being guided. By life, by challenge, by your own untapped strength. The path wasn't gone. It was just hidden, beneath fear, beneath comfort, beneath doubt. And the moment you stepped away from the old and into the unknown, the moment you surrendered to the journey, you began to find the only thing that ever mattered, yourself. So when you feel lost, remember this. Maybe it's not about finding your way back. Maybe it's about finding your way forward, not to who you were, but to who you're meant to become. The forest is not your enemy, it's your mirror, and in its stillness, you can finally hear what your soul has been trying to tell you all along. The breadcrumbs of your past cannot guide you through the forest of transformation. Many times in life, we leave behind trails, traces of where we've been, of what we've done, of who we used to be. We think that by doing so, we can always find our way back, as if safety and comfort lie behind us. Like Hansel dropping breadcrumbs to find his way home, we too try to hold on to patterns, identities, beliefs, and relationships from our past, thinking they will help us navigate the unknown. But life has a way of teaching that transformation is not a path you walk backwards. Growth is not something you return to. It is something you walk toward even when everything familiar begins to disappear. When Hansel and Gretel dropped their breadcrumbs, they believed it was a clever plan, a way to avoid getting truly lost. It gave them comfort, a sense of control, but the forest did not allow that comfort to last. Birds came and took those breadcrumbs, nature removed the past, life erased the trail, and this was not an accident. It was a lesson. You cannot move into your future while trying to hold on to everything you've left behind. Transformation demands that you burn the old maps, that you step away from the person you were and step fully into the unknown, into the present moment, into who you are becoming. The breadcrumbs represent everything you think you need to feel safe. Your habits, your attachments, your self-image, the approval of others, the routines that keep you numb, the identities that keep you small. But as long as you follow breadcrumbs, you're not creating your own path, you're tracing an old one. You're looking for validation from the past rather than trusting the power of who you are now. The forest, the metaphor for transformation, does not operate on predictability. It invites surrender. It invites awareness. It invites courage. Many people fear losing their trail because they think the past holds the answers. They cling to who they were in an attempt to avoid the discomfort of change. But the truth is, you were not meant to stay the same. You were not meant to stay in the house that no longer fits you, in the story that no longer serves you. When the breadcrumbs disappear, it is not a punishment. It is life telling you, you are ready to move without guarantees, you are ready to lead yourself, not follow a trail, you are ready to meet a version of yourself that the past could never have imagined. Sometimes you will reach a point in your life where the methods that once worked no longer do. You can no longer rely on the same coping mechanisms, the same relationships, the same ways of thinking. This is not because you've failed, it is because you've outgrown them. The breadcrumbs of yesterday can no longer nourish the soul of today. They are not strong enough to carry the weight of your next chapter. Just as Hansel and Gretel eventually had to let go of the idea of finding their way back home, you too must let go of the belief that your past defines you. Transformation requires trust in the unseen. It demands presence. When the trail behind you is gone, your only option is to become deeply aware of the now. What is in front of you? What can you feel, sense, learn in this moment? Who are you becoming in the silence, in the uncertainty, in the space where the past cannot speak? This is where true strength arises, not from what you've done, but from what you are willing to face. People sometimes ask, how do I know if I'm changing? How do I know if I'm transforming? The answer is, when the old ways stop working. When you begin to feel the pull to go deeper, even if it's uncomfortable. When you stop seeking approval for every step you take. When you stop trying to explain your journey to people who are not walking it with you. The disappearance of the breadcrumbs is not failure, it is freedom. You are no longer tied to your history. You are being called into your destiny. Think of a butterfly. Before it flies, it must first let go of the caterpillar. It cannot carry that old body into the skies. It must dissolve completely inside the cocoon. That is the forest. That is transformation. There is no going back. There is no breadcrumb trail through metamorphosis. There is only surrender and faith and the willingness to let go of what was in order to fully embrace what is. In a world that tells you to have a plan, to know where you're going, to follow the map, transformation is the opposite. It says, feel your way forward. Trust the process, even when it's dark, even when it makes no sense, because the forest is not chaos. It is wisdom in disguise. It strips away the unnecessary so that the essential can rise. It removes your breadcrumbs so that you stop looking back and start looking within. The mind wants to preserve the past. It believes that what was will help secure what will be. But the soul knows better. The soul craves evolution. It knows that breadcrumbs are not the way. They are a weight, a distraction, a comfort that has expired. And so, when the trail disappears, it is not a loss. It is a signal. A new beginning, an invitation to finally walk your own path. Hansel and Gretel had no choice but to keep moving, and in that movement they discovered strength they didn't know they had. You too have that strength, not because you can see the whole path, but because you are willing to take the next step, with or without breadcrumbs, because you are no longer afraid of being lost. You are more afraid of staying small, more afraid of living a life that doesn't align with who you truly are. In the end, the forest doesn't test your memory. It tests your presence. It doesn't ask you to follow. It asks you to lead, to trust, to awaken. So when your breadcrumbs disappear, do not panic. Do not mourn the past. Stand tall, breathe deep, and remember, you were not meant to return to where you started. You were meant to become someone who no longer needs the trail. Because the path was never outside of you. It was always within. True strength is born when you stop waiting to be rescued. Life is full of moments when we hope someone else will fix our problems, carry our burdens, or show us the way out of our difficulties. It's a natural human instinct to look outward when we feel afraid, overwhelmed, or uncertain. From childhood, we're conditioned to believe that someone wiser, stronger, or more experienced will arrive and guide us. But there comes a point in every meaningful journey where that expectation must fall away. Like Hansel and Gretel, we all reach a moment in our story where we realize that no one is coming. And rather than this being a reason to collapse, it becomes the very ground on which we rise. When you stop waiting for rescue, you begin to access a deeper part of yourself. You start to see that you've always had more resilience than you thought. It doesn't happen all at once. It begins in small moments of decision, the choice to take one more step when you feel tired, to speak your truth even when your voice shakes, to keep moving forward when everything inside wants to give up. These moments don't look heroic from the outside. They look quiet, even ordinary, but within them is the fire of transformation. Every time you choose to act, instead of waiting for someone to act for you, you grow. You evolve, you become. Strength is not always loud. It doesn't always wear armor. Sometimes it's simply the refusal to give in to hopelessness. It's the courage to look around in the darkness and say, I will find a way. Hansel and Gretel did not have anyone guiding them. Their parents had abandoned them. Their breadcrumbs had vanished. They were alone in the forest, surrounded by fear. But they did not sit down and wait. They moved, they thought, they observed, they trusted their instincts. And eventually, they overcame the very thing that threatened to consume them. The witch in the story is not just a character, it's a symbol. It represents everything that lures you into comfort with hidden danger, everything that promises ease but delivers destruction. Facing it required more than physical escape, it required inner strength. When you stop waiting to be rescued, you stop giving your power away. You no longer live in dependence. You no longer hand over your decisions, your peace, or your destiny to others. You stop saying, if only someone would help me, and start asking, what can I do with what I have right now? That shift from external dependence to internal responsibility is the birthplace of strength. Not the strength of muscle or domination, but the quiet, unshakable strength of character, of self, trust, of awareness, and the more you exercise it, the more it grows. It's tempting to hope someone else will change your life. That the right person, the right opportunity, or the right time will appear and everything will make sense. But that mindset keeps you passive. It keeps you waiting, and while you're waiting, life is still moving. Time is still passing. Opportunities still rise and fall. The truth is, no one knows your inner world better than you. No one can fully understand your journey the way you do. That's not a curse, it's a gift. Because it means you are your own best rescuer. You are the one you've been waiting for. The stories we've grown up with often focus on heroes who arrive just in time to save the day, but Hansel and Gretel's story is different. There is no prince, no warrior, no magical intervention. Just two children in danger, finding their way using only their courage and their cleverness. That's what makes their story powerful. It reminds us that strength is not something given to us. It's something revealed in us when we are forced to act. When there is no one to lean on, we discover we can stand. When there is no one to guide us, we begin to see our own wisdom. There is a moment when you realize that blaming others, waiting for validation, or depending on the past no longer serves you. You may feel fear, you may feel loneliness, but you also feel something else, freedom. Because in the absence of external control, you gain internal mastery. You begin to lead yourself. You begin to shape your own narrative. And in doing so, you stop living reactively and start living intentionally. That is the shift from weakness to strength, from helplessness to power, from being acted upon to becoming the author of your own life. This doesn't mean you never need help. It doesn't mean you become cold or disconnected. It means that even when help comes, you know it is support, not salvation. You no longer depend on it for your identity or your direction. It's a tool, not a crutch. True strength is knowing that you are enough, not because you have all the answers, but because you have the will to seek them, the humility to learn, and the heart to keep going. In the face of challenge, you learn who you are. Not through comfort, but through difficulty. Not through praise, but through perseverance. And every time you choose to act, to rise, to respond with clarity rather than collapse in fear, you reinforce your inner foundation. You become someone who can be trusted, not just by others, but by yourself, and that self-trust is the root of all lasting power. Hansel and Gretel's journey was not made easier by waiting, it was transformed by doing. By deciding, by trusting, and the same is true for you. The world may not always offer you safety, people may fail you, circumstances may change, but your strength is not dependent on any of those things. It lives in you, quietly, steadily, waiting for you to stop waiting. The moment you stop expecting someone to show up and rescue you, you begin to rescue yourself. Not just from external problems, but from the internal patterns that have kept you small. You stop being a victim of your story and start becoming its hero, and in doing so, you show others that it's possible, that it's worth it, that even in the darkest forest, with no breadcrumbs and no guide, there is a way. And that way begins when you say, I will no longer wait, I will act, I will choose, I will grow. That is how strength is born, not in ease but in decision, not in rescue but in responsibility, not in others but in you. Even in darkness, the fire within can lead you home. There are moments in life when everything around you feels uncertain, unfamiliar, and frightening. Just like Hansel and Gretel deep in the forest, you might feel surrounded by shadows, with no clear path ahead, no map to guide you, and no one calling your name from the distance. The darkness, whether external or internal, is something every human being encounters, moments of grief, of doubt, of fear, of loneliness. But within that darkness lies the opportunity to discover the most powerful force you possess. The inner fire, the quiet light that refuses to go out, the part of you that knows how to keep going even when nothing makes sense. The story of Hansel and Gretel teaches us that the world outside can change suddenly, safe places can disappear, familiar people can fail us, the light we used to rely on can vanish, but the true journey does not happen around us, it happens inside us. When the night falls and we feel most lost, that's when our inner fire begins to glow. It's not loud, it's not dramatic. It starts with a decision, a choice not to give up, a choice to trust something deeper than circumstance. That spark of will, of hope, of resilience, that is the fire within. You might not even realize it's there until life tests you. It's not needed when everything is easy. It's not visible when the sun is shining and the path is clear. It comes alive when you're brought to your knees. It speaks when the world falls silent. And once you learn to recognize it, to lean into it, to believe in it, you realize that no matter how dark the forest, you are never truly without direction. Because that fire, your inner strength, your awareness, your spirit, doesn't depend on anything outside of you. It is yours, untouchable, indestructible. In our lives, we often search for external light. We chase relationships, success, validation, trying to feel safe and guided. But all of those things can fade. People can leave. Circumstances can crumble. The world can shift overnight. And when it does, you will be left with one question: what now? That is when the fire within begins to answer. It says, I am still here. It says, take one more step. It says, you have made it this far and you can go farther. That fire is not just motivation. It is memory. It remembers your strength when you forget. It remembers your worth when you doubt. It remembers your truth when the world tries to confuse you. Hansel and Gretel didn't find their way out by waiting for the forest to change. They didn't rely on the world becoming easier. They relied on themselves, on their ability to keep moving, on their decision to act despite fear, and in doing so, they reignited the flame within. The story shows us that even in the darkest moments, we can choose to act from light. We can respond to chaos with clarity, to fear with courage, to pain with purpose. That is the fire. It doesn't burn others. It doesn't destroy. It illuminates, it guides, it transforms. You don't need to feel fearless to follow your inner fire. In fact, fear often walks beside it. The difference is that fire keeps moving forward. It doesn't wait for the fear to vanish. It moves with it, through it, beyond it. That's the secret to finding your way home, not erasing the darkness, but refusing to let it define you. You may stumble, you may fall, but each time you rise, the fire burns stronger. Each time you listen to that voice inside that says, don't give up. It grows brighter, and eventually that light becomes so familiar, so trusted, that even the deepest darkness cannot shake you. Sometimes the fire looks like patience, sometimes it looks like silent endurance, sometimes it looks like taking action no one else understands, but whatever form it takes, it is always rooted in truth. Your truth, not the world's opinion, not your past mistakes, not your fears, but the deeper knowing that you are meant for more, that you are capable, that you are evolving, that you are already on the way home. Home isn't always a place, it's a state of being, a sense of alignment with who you really are, a feeling of peace even in difficulty. When Hansel and Gretel escaped the witch and found their way back, they didn't just return to a physical location. They returned to themselves. They emerged stronger, wiser, no longer children in need of protection, but individuals who had walked through fire and come out the other side. And the only reason they could do that was because, when everything else disappeared, their inner light remained. You have that light too, you always have. It may have been covered up by years of fear, doubt, or pain. It may have been buried beneath disappointment or heartbreak, but it is still there, waiting, ready. And the more you trust it, the more it guides you, not with loud certainty, but with quiet truth. It tells you what is right. It nudges you toward what is real. It invites you to walk with faith, even when the path is hidden. In a world that often demands speed and clarity, the fire within asks for presence and trust. It doesn't promise ease, but it promises growth. It doesn't remove difficulty. It reveals your power to face it, and it reminds you that you are not here to be consumed by darkness. You are here to bring light to it, to walk into it, not as a victim, but as a creator, as someone who refuses to be defined by fear, as someone who carries their home within them wherever they go. There will be times when you forget the fire is there. That's okay, that's part of the path, but it never forgets you, it never leaves you. And the moment you pause, breathe, and turn inward, you will feel it again. Maybe just a flicker, maybe a spark, but that's enough, because the fire doesn't need to be loud to be powerful. It just needs to be trusted, fed, honored, and in doing so, it will lead you step by step, breath by breath, back to yourself, back to clarity, back to the life that was always meant for you. Even in darkness, the fire within can lead you home. And once you realize that, you will never again be afraid of the night.